I'm Allison from Learning at the Primary Pond. I'm a literacy specialist, and in this video, I'm going to share with you how I choose word work activities for my kindergarten, first grade, or second grade students that are actually effective. When I say word work activities, I really just mean any kind of activities that students are doing, typically independently, to practice high frequency words, or maybe words from a phonics list, whatever kind of words they're practicing on their own. And as you may already know, there's a ton of different options out there. You could search Pinterest or Google and probably find 100. But the question is, not all of those are necessarily the best activities, so which ones are the most effective and why? And that's exactly what we're going to cover in this video. Before I dive in though, I want to remind you to hit subscribe and the little bell so that you get notified every single time I post a brand new video about teaching literacy in K2. Okay, so before we get into the strategies, I want to mention that some of the activities you're going to hear me talk about have kids working with words in isolation, and then some have them working with words in context. So what's the difference? In isolation means that the kids are just practicing the words. In context means that they're practicing the words in the context of reading and writing. Both are important, right? We need to give our kids opportunities to just focus on words, but then also bring it back to actual text, because we're not trying to teach them to be word masters and just be able to write random words, right? We want them to be able to read and write. So the activities and strategies that I'm going to share with you are a combination of both. I try to use some of each when I'm planning word rec activities for my kiddos. Okay, so first things first, one thing that we want to look for when we're planning word work activities for our students is, does the activity have students actually reading the words? Right now, I want you to let me know in the comments section if you've ever had students who maybe were, like sorting words or writing words and they weren't reading them. And maybe they couldn't even read some of the words. They were just kind of like blindly copying or doing whatever. If this has ever happened to you, just type yes in the comments. It's very common. If it's happened to you, you're not alone for sure. But that's not what we want, right? Again, the purpose of having them practice words is so that they can read and write, and so therefore they need to be able to read those words. So a really simple way around this is whatever word work activity you're having them do, simply have them read the words to a partner before they do the activity, and again at the end. Now, sometimes, depending on what activity you're doing, it may make more sense for them to be reading as they're doing it, but you want them ideally to read the words at least 2 times, and then having that partner accountability will, help make sure that they actually do it. Now, let's say you're in a situation where your kids can't read to a partner for whatever reason, or that's just not the way that you structure things. Well, no problem. If you have them take a tablet or some sort of technology device, you can actually have them make a video of themselves reading the words. So let's say you have an iPad or a tablet, and maybe they have written their words or sorted their words. You just have them pick up the tablet, hit record, and then they're holding the tablet. I should actually have a tablet to be showing you, but imagine. They're holding the tablet, and then they're showing you their words that they have on the table, and they're reading the words out loud. So that is a possible way around it. Another thing you could do is just have them read to a parent volunteer. Whenever possible, I love to have parent volunteers in my classroom during center time because it's just so helpful to have another adult. And it doesn't take a highly trained individual, right, to just have a kiddo read their words. So those are all options, but I do believe that it's very important for our kiddos to actually read the words at least 2 times while they're practicing. All right, so another characteristic of effective word work activities is that they encourage students to attend to patterns. Now, some of this kind of comes into the words that you're actually choosing for students to practice. I think of words that my kids are practicing as being in 2 categories. So every week we will have either 1 or 2 target phonics patterns. So for example, we might be doing EE and EA words. They both can represent the long E sound. And so my kids might have some words with each of those patterns. And then they also might be practicing some high frequency words. And the high frequency words, if they have the EE or EA pattern, great, but sometimes there will be some words that don't necessarily follow that pattern. But generally speaking, you want there to be some patterns in the words that the kids are working on. And even with high frequency words, you can kind of make that happen too, because although they may be irregularly spelled. Not all high frequency words are, but some are. If you think about words like would and could and should, maybe have the kids work on those words in 1 week because there is technically a pattern. But anyway, so part of this comes into you choosing words that follow a pattern, but then the other part is choosing word work activities that require the kids to pay attention to those patterns. Now, you may have heard of something called rainbow writing, where kids are just writing their words in different colors, and this activity is okay. You know, the motor action of them writing the words can be helpful, but what you can also find is that kids are just like blindly copying and not really thinking about the words at all. So here's a really simple way to take like the fun of having them use different colors and actually turn it into a more meaningful word work activity. So let's use that same example of EE and EA words, right? Let's say that your students are practicing some of each type of word, and so you have them choose 2 different colors. I'll just do that, and then we're going to have EA. So then you would give them, ideally these would be on like index cards or small pieces of paper. You'd give them a stack of words. They'd be kind of mixed up, some with EE, some with EA. You would even just have a list of them mixed in together. And so instead of the kids just like randomly copying them in different colors, what you do is like they pull a word card and it says meat, so they write meat over here. Then they pull a word card and it says seat, so they write seat over here. So you're still giving them that fun aspect of like the rainbow writing. However, this is requiring them not only to read the words and write the words, but it's also requiring them to pay attention to like, okay, what pattern does this word have? So it's going above and beyond the rainbow writing to make the activity even more meaningful. Okay, so moving on to another characteristic of effective word work activities. This is number 3, and this one is that effective word work activities incorporate multisensory practice as often as possible. Now, when I was earlier on in my teaching career, when I thought of multisensory, what I thought of is like shaving cream on the tables and like, I don't know, like sand everywhere and basically just a mess. And as someone who is quite organized and neat, that thought drove me crazy. But what I eventually learned as time went on is that multisensory doesn't have to be messy. You know, the shaving cream on the tables, that's fun. It also cleans the tables really well, by the way. Do that stuff sometimes, but you can still incorporate multisensory work without having a huge mess and without making it unmanageable for centers or independent work. So let me give you some examples. Multisensory, I don't think I said this yet, but multisensory just means involving more than one sense. So anytime that the kids are like writing and saying maybe like, you know, the sounds or the word, that's incorporating more than one sense. Maybe they're tracing. It could be as simple as just like they're literally tracing on the table a word and like saying the letters A, N, D, and, right? So that's like a very simple option. There's other things that you can have the kids do. So this is one option that I find pretty easy to manage. This is colored sand in just like a plastic pencil box. You want to find one that doesn't have any small holes in it, by the way, otherwise you will end up with sand all over. But you know, let's say you give the kids a list of words or words on cards and they just have to like trace them in the sand. So A, N, D, and. It's incorporating more than one sense, but it's also not making a mess. There's so many other options too. So like you might have sand in a paper plate, you might have a gel bag. In a gel bag, the gel bag I feel like is usually better for short words or letters. They can like, if they're working on the letter S, for example, like with kindergartners, S says S. You couldn't see me tracing it, but I was tracing it here. Hopefully you can kind of see the outline of the letter. So all this is, by the way, is just like a normal baggie with dollar store inexpensive hair gel, some food coloring, and then I put like some little sparklies or something in here. And I did also attach cardstock to the back so that the kids could see the letter more clearly, and then I taped it for safety purposes because we don't want gel all over the place. So those are just some options. I think in a different video, it might have been like a high frequency words video, I've also shown where I have the kids trace on top of a knitting screen, which is like just a plastic screen, and then it creates like bumpy letters. So you can look for that high frequency words video, but There's just so many different options. Multisensory does not have to be messy, but it's really good for, number one, engaging kids, but number two, like forming those, those memory things in the brain to help them remember whatever words they're working on, or even just like sounds and letters, like I mentioned, with your kindergartners may be working on. All right, so the last characteristic of effective word work instruction, or word work activities rather, that I want to share is that they involve connections to reading and writing as much as possible. So you remember at the very beginning, I talked about how some word work activities should be working on words in isolation, and pretty much everything we've talked about up until now has been word work activities in isolation, but we also want to have some in-context word work practice. Now, this can be done in a variety of ways. Number one, this is so simple and kids really enjoy it because you just talk it up and say, hey, we're going to be detectives and we're going to go on a word hunt. You give them a phonics pattern that they're working on. So it might be like SH if they're working on digraphs, or maybe you do two, SH and CH. And if they have a book bag or a book bin, they just start going through those books and making a list, and you can give them like special paper so it feels fancy. And they're just making a list of words that they find with SH and CH. Another thing you can do is just have them working with decodable text. This is especially good if you're focusing on, again, the example of like SH. If you have a decodable text, which I do have some in my Learning at the Primary Pond Teachers Pay Teachers store, feel free to let me know if you need a link. But anyway, those texts are written so that there are lots of SH words in them, so it's a greater likelihood that the kids are going to end up with a really good list. So the reason why we want them doing things like word hunts is because we want them to understand, hey, we're working on these word patterns, or we're working on these high frequency words. It doesn't have to be patterns. It could be just, here's these 3 high frequency words, do a word hunt for them. We want them to make the connections, right? Because you can teach your heart out for a phonics lesson or about a high frequency word, but then if the kids aren't actually applying that and noticing it in their reading, then it really doesn't matter, right? So that's why these in-context activities are so important. Another part of this would be writing, right? So maybe you have a decodable text that has a lot of SH words in it. Have the kids write about that text, because then they're by default using a lot of those SH words. This is again why decodable texts are so helpful. And again, if you need a link for the decodable text, just in a comment type, can I get a link for the decodable text? And I'll be happy to share that with you. Okay, so real quick, let's review the characteristics of effective word work activities that we've covered. So number one, we said that effective word work activities have kids actually reading their words. Number two, they involve kids attending to patterns as much as possible. Number three, they have kids using multisensory practice, like the sand in the box or whatever else you want to do. And then number four, we said that they have the kids doing real reading and real writing activities, making those connections as much as possible. I hope that this information was helpful to you. I would also love to know, hey, if you've got a favorite word work activity, feel free to share that in the comments. We can all learn so very much from each other. If you would like to learn more about effective phonics routines, both for kids to do independently, but also for the whole group, I have a free online workshop that goes way more in depth. It's an hour long with slides and just so much to share with you. So look for the link that goes along with this video and you can sign up for that. Totally free. You get a freebie certificate. So lots of good stuff there for you. Again, I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Hit the like button, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.